sequencer track and choose Duplicate Tracks and Devices.
What was this?
Most of what we need for our second track is already in place now. I'll pan each mix channel left and right to
when we
widen
are
them in my
looking
stereo
at
mix.
solving
And now
nonlinear
we just
systems of
need to swap the
equations, we're
combinator
working
preset
with
and the
equations
dual
that I
arpeggio
showed you are
settings.
not lines.
For the patch,
For
let's go to
solving
one we've
nonlinear
seen in
systems of
another
equations,
tutorial,
we can
Hipster Square.
actually,
And for
again,
dual arpeggio,
use
let's
substitution
browse
or
one of the
elimination.
presets to see what
For each of
complements
the
our first
following,
track.
we're going to solve using substitution or elimination, and then use our graphing calculators to see the sketch of the graph. So looking at example 1, would
That's
you use
pretty close to
substitution
perfect.
or elimination
In
on this
fact,
one?
there's nothing stopping me from customizing a
Substitution.
preset pattern
In fact,
once I'm
this one would
close,
be
like leaving some
impossible to use
space on the end of the
elimination,
phrase by
just because we have
deactivating
an
these
x
cells
squared and
here.
not a y, so we can't, it would be too,
I can even
it would be
offset
impossible
one
to
or
use
both of
elimination.
these patterns
But
using
looking
the
at
shift step
substitution, we
parameter.
can clearly
If I
take
move them
x
both
plus 3
2 steps,
squared
the pattern
and
will
plug
shift
that
from
in
accenting the
for the variable
downbeats
y,
to the upbeats. Let
and
me
that
turn
would
on
give
the
us
click so
x
you can feel where it
plus
sits.
2
Here it
times
is on the
quantity
beat.
x plus 3 squared is equal to negative 2. Now think about your order of operations. Do we distribute the 2
now
in, or
off
do we
the
do
beat.
the exponent first? Exponent.
This is all
parentheses,
well
that comes
and
before
good, but things right
multiplication.
now sound
So
more
x
like a
plus 3
BBC
squared,
science
that will
documentary
turn
than a
into
song.
x squared
One way to add a human element
plus
to our
6x
phrases is with
plus
customized
9.
variation. I don't
And
have to
then we
run
can
dual
apply that
arpeggio
factor of
live.
2
I can click
inside
the Send to Track
equal to
button
negative
above our
2.
players to render the MIDI notes
So
to my
distribute the
sequencer,
2,
where I can then go in and
that
modify
gives
notes
us
to vary the
x
pattern.
plus 2x squared plus 12x
But still, we need
plus
some recognizable
18
music fast. And to
is
get
equal
it,
to
I want to
negative
show
2.
you one of my favorite little tricks for the
Now
non-keyboard
what do we do
players
that
out
we
there.
see an x
So,
squared
guitarists,
term
drummers,
and some linear
theremin
terms?
virtuosos, I'm talking to you
Will
guys
be our
now.
method of
We've already
approach here.
seen in a previous tutorial
Set
how
it equal
scales
to
and
0
chords
and
makes
factor.
playing
Awesome.
chords something
So we take
anyone can
x
do.
and
Simply
12x,
put, scales and chords will
combine
generate
those,
the
we
notes
have
of your
2x
chord from a
squared
single note
plus
input.
13x.
But it won't do anything
We're going
particularly
to set this equal
interesting
to
with
0,
that chord
so
once
add
it's
the
done.
2.
Enter dual arpeggio
And
to the rescue.
that would give us
For our
x
piano,
or
I'll
2x
use
squared
Radical
plus
Piano,
13x
a rack
plus
extension
20
available in the propeller
is
head
equal to
shop.
0.
I'll drag a scales and chords above
Now
it
you have two
and set the
options.
key
You
to
can try
D
to
minor.
factor or
Now,
quadratic
before I
formula.
do this next step, let's
I'll
all
go
get
ahead
on the
and try
same
to factor
page.
this.
Have you ever seen piano players do
2x
that thing where
times
they
x
rock
would
back
give
and
us x
forth
squared.
across a chord,
The last
playing the
term's
third and fifth
positive,
on the
so we know
downbeat
that it's
and the
going to be
root
the
on the
same
upbeat?
signs as the
Of
middle
course you
term,
have, because it's
plus
in
and
roughly
plus.
38
And was anybody
septillion
able
songs.
to
I'm
look at
talking
the
about
factors
this
of 20?
playing style.
5 and 4. If we make the 5
Now that we all know what I mean,
here,
I want to
and the
emulate
4
that
here,
piano style.
that would give
Let's
us
drag a
8x
dual
plus
arpeggio
5x, which
below
would give us
scales
that
and chords and
13x.
reset it. It's an
Awesome.
eighth note
We
phrase,
set both of
which
these
has
equal
just
to
2
0
steps
and
to it.
solve.
An upbeat
So I have
and a downbeat.
2x plus 5
That means I can
equals 0.
activate my steps switch and set
X
it to
equals
2
negative
steps.
4 for
While I
this
hold
one.
down a single note on my
And then
keyboard,
subtract
I can
5
see
and
and
divide by
activate
2,
step 1 for the
and
upper
we get
notes of my
x is equal to
player-generated
negative
triad.
5 halves.
I'll activate the root note on step 2,
So what this means
the upbeat.
is that I have two
Just
answers
one more
for
issue.
x.
Piano
So I'm
players
going
have
to
2
plug
hands.
in and find
Thankfully,
what
we
would
have
be
2
those points
arpeggiators
of
to match,
intersection.
and we can emulate
What's
the
the
common
corresponding
left-hand
y
technique of
value
long
when
sustained
x
bass
takes on
notes.
both of these
I'll
values.
activate ARP2,
So
flip the
looking up
pattern
at the
switch,
top
and
here,
draw
I'm going
in
to see
one
when
long tied
x
note on the bottom row,
is
which
equal
represents
to
the
negative
root note
4.
position. Also,
What is the
importantly,
correlating
I'll
y
transpose
value?
ARP2
So I would
down
plug
one
that
octave
in.
to move it
Y
into
is
the
equal
typical
to
left-hand
negative 4
range.
plus 3
Add a little
squared.
reverb, and things are starting
And
to take
negative
shape.
4 plus 3 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared would give me 1. So that means one solution point
From here,
that I should
you're
see
free to go
come
on
up my
building your
graph
track with more parts.
negative
For
4,
me,
1.
these arpeggiators inspired a guitar part to blend the
And then when I plug
computer-generated
in x
pattern
as
field with
negative 5
organic
halves,
textures.
I have y is equal to negative
One other
5
production
halves.
tip I'll give you. When you're
plus
building
3
up
squared.
songs around a lot of rhymmic arpeggiators, it's
I
often
think
nice
that
to
is negative
counterbalance
5
all
halves
those
plus
quick,
6
sharp
halves.
notes with some
Then that
slower
would be 1
elements,
half.
like I did with this bass guitar.
Squared, and the correlating y value would equal 4. So that means if I'm looking at the ordered pair, my other answer would be when x is negative
Or even
5
these
halves,
Neptune vocal
y would
synth
be
harmonies,
4.
which themselves are being generated using a player.
Alright, now the next part of the instruction said use your calculator to confirm these points. So I'm going to take, and this will be kind of my calculator part. In your calculator, we're always
We could
going
spend
to
a
be solving
whole
for y,
day
because
exploring
we're
a
going to
million
be
other
plugging
possibilities with
y1
dual
as
arpeggio.
the first
But that's what I'm
equation,
hoping you'll now
which
do on
is
your own.
nice, is
We've
already
only scratched the
isolated, x
surface.
plus
It's time for
4
you
squared.
to go deep. Good luck.
y2 would be the second equation, so I'm going to have to take that that second equation, which is x plus 2y equals -2, and solve for y. So subtract x, negative x minus
Note
2.
echo is probably
Divide
the
everything
easiest
by
player
2.
device to initially
And I
understand,
have
but
y
the
is
deepest
equal
player to
negative
explore.
1/2
So what
x
is note echo?
minus 1.
In a traditional delay
is what I'll
effect,
enter in
an
as my
audio
Y
signal
cube.
comes out of an instrument and
Visually,
into a
it might be
delay where it's
helpful for me to
repeated
think
a
what
certain
types of
number of
graphs
times
should I get on
and
my
at a certain
calculator?
speed. The note
what
echo
type of
player
graph
takes that
should the
fundamental
first one be?
concept but moves its position in the
Parabola,
music
good. It
making
should be
process
facing up.
from echoing the audio signal coming out of an instrument
what type of
to
graph should the
instead
second one be?
echoing the notes going in to play that instrument. Let me show you
lot.
what I mean. We'll drag
Just
our old
visually
faithful
confirming,
ID8 grand
will this
piano
be
into the
what's on my
rack and
calculator?
add a note echo
So go
above
ahead and
it.
take your
Let's
calculator
reset
out.
note echo
Let's
immediately to clear the
confirm this
default
graph
preset.
here.
Now when I play a note on my MIDI
Why is it?
keyboard, it
There
first
we go.
passes through
Okay.
note echo, where, just like a traditional
Now,
delay,
even if I
it
didn't
gets
have my
repeated a certain
calculator on
number
me,
of times and at a certain
think
speed.
about the
But this
parabola.
isn't just
X plus
repeating
3
the
is in
sound
the
of the first note.
parentheses.
It's generating
What does that mean about
repetitions
how
of
the
the actual
original
note
shape?
itself to play the piano multiple
this.
times.
How would that be shifted?
When I press one note, it
So
acts like I
left
pressed
3,
the
so
key 4
1,
more
2,
times.
3,
You
there
can
would
see
be
the
my point of
repetitions
origin.
happening on note echo's
There's
front
no
panel.
number in front of the parentheses.
If you want
so
fewer
I know
note
that this
repetitions,
is not
you can decrease the
shrunk
repeat
or
knob
widened in any way.
or
Just kind
increase
of
for more
revisiting what we've learned in
repetitions.
the past. So even before I take out my calculator,
We can change
I know
the
that it
speed of
should
the
look
repetitions too,
just like that nice parabolic
and decide
shape.
whether the speed is measured in
matches
our
the
song's
parent graph.
tempo, like eighth notes and quarter notes, or in
And then
milliseconds.
the line, even if I didn't
Unlike
have
a
my
traditional
calculator on me,
delay, since
I
note echo
know
is
that it has a
creating
y
repetitions of
intercept
the
at
actual
negative
note
1
itself
or
before it
negative
reaches
1,
the instrument,
and a slope
we
of
can
negative
modify the
1/2,
repeated
up
notes
1,
and the
left
instrument's
2,
performance will change
up
as a
1, left
result.
2.
The pitch and velocity
And
knobs
even
establish
before
further
I
rules
grab
for
my
the way each
calculator,
note
I can
repetition behaves.
confirm
If we set our
those
pitch
2
knob to
points that I
+1, then each
found
time a note is
at
repeated,
negative
it will
4,
increase
1,
its pitch by 1 semitone,
and
creating a
negative
chromatic
5 halves,
scale.
1/4. Negative
If we
5
set it to
halves,
+3,
1/4.
each note repetition
Well, let's
moves
go
up
ahead
the
and
keyboard
a lot
3
of you
semitones,
grabbed your calculator already.
arpeggiating
We'll
a
just
fully
confirm
diminished
that
chord.
on the calculator. So we have
And if we set
quantity
it to
x plus
+12,
3
our
squared,
repetitions jump up a
and
full octave each
the
time.
negative 1/2 x
The
minus
velocity
1.
knob works off the same concept. When we
And
scale
when
the
we graph
velocity
that, we
up
can
on
see the
note
same
echo,
thing.
it's like
I'll just-
each note repetition is striking the piano harder and harder, or softer and softer.
And then just a quick reminder, guys.
But that's
I know we've
it
done
for
stuff
note
like
echo's
this in the
settings.
past,
Let's take
but
a
what would
look
we
at a
do
couple
on
of
the
musical
calculator to
ways to
find
use
those
note
points of
echo.
intersection?
One technique is to not actually use
Second
note echo
trace,
as an
number
echo at
5.
all. If I set note
intersect,
echo's
and we're gonna
velocity
have to
to
do
the
this
default
twice.
position, the
So we go
repeats
to
knob
where we
1,
want to be on the first
and the
curve.
pitch to +12,
Right now I'm at the
our single
point
repeated
4,
note
or
jumps
the
up
x
1
value of
octave.
4, so I need to move all the
But
way
if I
over
now
until I
set the
get
step
closer
length
to
to
an x
0,
value of
you can hear
2.
2 notes simultaneously,
Enter,
both the one I'm playing
enter,
and
and
the
I can see
octave
that first
above
point of
generated by
intersection is
note echo.
-2.5.25, and then so that's negative.
If I change from
2.5,
+12 to
1/4,
another pitch interval,
and then do
like
that again,
+7,
and I can confirm
you can
that
hear
on
we
my
get a
calculator with the
two-note
other
chord
point,
with parallel fifths,
which is
or
4,
what
or
guitarists
-4,
like to
1.
call a power chord. But
Any
note echo
questions
is
on that
polyphonic,
process?
so it won't only
Before we
echo and
jump into
transpose single notes.
just kind of
It works
different
on chords too, turning this into
All right, let's take a
interesting
look at this
clusters.
next one then. Number 2.
If we increase the repeats
This
knob
one,
to 2, we
what do you
now
think
have
would
a
be more
three-note
helpful
chord
to
with the root, the
do?
fifth, and the
Elimination or
ninth.
substitution?
At 3 repeats,
Elimination,
we
good,
get a
'cause
note
they're
a
already
further
lined up by an
+7
x squared and a
semitones
y
higher,
squared. What would I
creating
multiply
what's
this
called
through
a
by? What do
quintal
you guys want to
harmonic
eliminate, x
stack,
or y
which
first?
you can refer to next time you want to
Alright,
impress
different.
your
Raise your hand
friends.
if you want x. Raise your hand if
But
you
if you
want y.
haven't tried writing in quintal
Raise your hand.
harmonics, and I'm guessing you haven't,
Okay, let's do x. All right, so
Quartal
if I
harmonics, which you
multiply
get by
both
setting
sides
the
by,
pitch
or
knob to
what would I
+5,
multiply the top equation by to eliminate x?
you'll be
-2.
surprised by the new ideas
So
it'll
that would
draw
give
out of
me
it.
-2
This idea
x
of using
squared
note echo to create chords can
minus
also be
2y
useful if you
squared
make house music,
is equal
while the
to
scales and
-8.
chords player uses music
And
theory to
say
automatically
the
create what's
bottom
called
equation
diatonic
would be the
chords, the
same.
correct chord to fit your song's key. Note echo can be used
Remember
to create
with
something
elimination,
else
make sure
called
that you always
parallel
add
chords.
straight down.
Let's change our pitch
So
knob
the
to
x's
+1
do
and our
eliminate,
repeats
and I
knob
have
to
-5
12. The
y
result
squared
sounds more like a piano
equal to
falling off a
-20.
building, because what we're
Divide both
hearing is
pieces
all
by
12 tones
-5,
of the chromatic scale played at
and I
once.
get y
However, the
squared
green
is equal
circles
to
on Note
4.
Echo's display act both as
So
visual
what
feedback, showing you
should
the
be my
echoes as they
answer
take
for y?
place, and also as mutes, allowing you
Yes,
to
I love you
disable
guys.
individual
You all said
repeats in the
plus
chain.
or minus
So
2.
let's mute all the
Here's the
repetitions
thing,
to
if you
start
had just
and
said
specify
positive
the
2, you would
intervals of a
miss
minor
an
7
entire
chord, popular in
answer.
dance music. In chromatic
Now, when
terms,
I'm looking
a
at
minor
this,
7 is made
I
up
have
of a
to
root
look
note,
at two
and
cases.
then notes 3,
when y is
7,
equal to 2,
and 10 steps
what's my
higher.
correlating x
Instant
value?
house music.
And when y is equal to negative 2, what's my correlating x value? So I'm going to plug y in as 2, and I have x squared plus 2 squared.
The chord doesn't adjust
equal
diatonically to
4.
our
Plug
song's
that
key.
into the original
You don't
equation.
need to memorize the
So that gives
chromatic
me x
recipe
squared
for
plus
different
4
parallel
equals
chord
4.
styles like this. By browsing
x
the
squared is
included
equal
patches
to
for Note
0.
Echo, you can load many different options.
So
This
x
idea
equals
of muting
0.
certain repetitions
Now be
isn't just
careful. How
useful
would I
when creating
list my
parallel
ordered
chords.
pair?
Let's revisit the step length
0,
setting
2.
to show you what I
So
mean.
make sure you see that we
First,
solved
let's
for
get
y,
off our
so that's
piano
our
sound by
correlated y
replacing
value.
it with a subtractor synthesizer
And
that
then
I'll
when y is
right-click
equal
to
to
reset
negative 2,
and change the default waveform
it
from
would actually end up
sawtooth
being
to
the same
square.
thing.
On
Just
Note
so that
Echo,
we
I'll
can
set my
see,
pitch to
we do
0,
have to take
my
into
repeats
account
to
that this
8,
is two
and my step
separate
length
points
to
as
1/16.
answers.
The velocity
So
I'll
x
set
squared
to a
plus 4
negative
equals
value to
4,
slightly soften
x
the
squared equals
repetitions.
0.
Now, I can
So our
use the
solution
mutes to
is
decide which
0,
note repeats are
negative 2.
triggered or muted, much the same way I might work with a step
Now we're going to
sequencer,
take a look
turning
at
off
how would
certain
you solve this on the
repetitions to create
calculator, which
rhythmic
is a little
patterns.
bit more complex just because we have some
When I play
squared
melodic
pieces
lines,
involved.
these repetitions and rhythms interact to
Before I
form
look
really
at the
nice musical
calculator,
passages,
we
like
should
this.
recognize what the first equation's graph should be. What should the first equation
To
be?
keep this tutorial focused
This is a
on Note
circle.
Echo, allow me to make a
What's the
few
radius?
quick
Just
production
review.
decisions here while you wait.
Radius is 2.
Let's see.
What's the
I'll add some
center?
reverb, blend the triangle wave into the patch.
What's being
Maybe a
subtracted
little
from
LFO to the
x and
filter.
y?
And
0.
there.
So 0, 0
let's record.
is our center. Remember, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Center is your hk. That's just kind of some review thrown in there. Number 2, you have not seen the graph
Let's
of
add to
yet.
this idea
This
by
would
dragging
be a
another
hyperbola,
instrument into the rack.
Just so you know.
And let's add a
It's
note
going to be
echo above
facing
it
down
and reset
and
the
up.
patch. Another
But
thing I
we're
like
gonna
to
look
do
at
with
how you
Note
can
Echo
see
is
the
to combine
calculator.
them.
Use your
So if we
graphing
set up
calculator
this
to
Note
develop
Echo
that
to
graph.
repeat an octave below
So let's
and
go
1/8
ahead and
note
let's
after
bring
our
these
played
equations
note,
over.
we
What
get this.
variable are we going to have to
Simple
solve
enough.
for? And
But
solve
let's
it on
add
the
a
calculator?
second Note Echo in the rack underneath
Y.
our first one.
So we
We'll
have
reset
x
it
squared
and
plus
then make
y
another
squared
simple
equals
style
4.
of echo with 2 repeats. But this
I'm
time,
going to
scaling an
solve for
octave
y,
up
so
with a quarter
subtract
note
x
step length.
squared.
I'll disable
Y
the first
squared
note echo
equals
so you can
4
hear this
minus
one on
x
its own.
squared. Take the square root.
With
Now
both
here's where
note
it gets
echoes
tricky.
active, our second note echo isn't simply getting the note
How
I'm playing
many
on my keyboard.
equations
It's
am I
also
going
getting
to
the
have
note
to
generated
plug
above
into my
it,
calculator
taking a
to
simple
represent
octave
this graph?
repetition and making it more interesting
I'm
with
going to
the
have
two
to plug
working
in
together.
a y1 as the positive square root of
We
4
can see the
minus x
results of
squared.
the two note echoes if we record that
y2
into our sequencer while
as the
activating the
opposite
direct
of
record
the
switch
square root of
above
4
our
minus x
players.
squared.
With direct record activated, our players
Now,
aren't
one
just
thing that
generating
I do
repetitions
want
on
to
the
make
fly,
sure that you
they're
are
recording the
aware of-
results into the sequencer.
Square root of 4 minus x squared and negative 4 minus x squared, there is a shortcut that you could use for your calculator. If you plug this in as
I'll
y1,
add a bass line to these parts
you
by
press
dragging in an angry
alpha
analog bass
trace,
sound fittingly
it will
called
access your
angry analog
F4.
bass.
So in this, I could press,
Okay,
and I'll show
maybe
you
a
guys
little
this.
less angry.
But I'll press
Let's
the
use
opposite,
one of the
and
early
if I go to
techniques we covered.
alpha,
Drag note echo
trace,
above our bass.
I can
Set it,
select
1 repeat,
the y1
0 step
that
length,
I've entered
and minus
in that
12 on the
equation.
pitch. Now
And then I
our
can just
bass
do
has a
the
lower
opposite
octave
of
sub to
Y1.
its sound.
So let's do that so I can show it to you. I'll change the source of this. And then we'll go on to solve for that second equation. But if I look at this as y equals, I would type in the positive square root of 4 minus x squared. And you guys can see that. And
The
now
more
if I
you
clear
work
this
with
out,
Note
I
Echo,
can do
the more you'll
negative,
find yourself thinking through different ways to
and
experiment
then
and
press
strategize.
alpha,
I'd like to add some type of
trace,
guitarish texture
and
to
notice
this idea.
selection
And one of
number
the things I
1
like to do with
is
Note
my
Echo
y1.
is use it
That's
as a
saying
type
I
of
want to
strumming
take the
device.
opposite
I'll
of
drag
the
a
equation
guitar
I've
patch
plugged
into the
in
rack.
y1. This can get
Remember
really,
that
really
parallel
can
chord
be
trick we
very, very
used to make
helpful
house
as your
music?
equations start
Let's
getting
do
lots
that
of weird
again,
fractions.
dragging a
you don't
note
want to retype
echo
it all
above
in.
our guitar, resetting it,
So now if I
minimizing
graph
our
this, I
step
should
length,
see the equation of a
maximizing our
circle.
repeats, setting
Now
our
notice
pitch to a
on your
chromatic plus
calculator
1
it doesn't
scale,
quite connect
muting
the
all our
circle,
notes to start,
just because the
and now
pixels are
activating
getting
the
so small there,
intervals
the
for a
calculator
basic
can't really
guitar
show it.
major
if I
chord
zoomed in, I
voicing.
should see that
So that'd be the
circle
root
shape
note,
connecting
plus
all
4,
the way to
plus
those
7, plus 12,
points, 2,
and
0,
plus
and negative
16.
2, 0.
So far, no
Any
strum.
questions on that?
But watch what happens if I turn off the tempo sync
All right,
switch
then let's
and
go
set
ahead and
my
let's
step
solve for that
length to
second
just
y,
16
and we'll
milliseconds.
go ahead and just finish finding the points of intersection.
We can
of
even
this
scale the
problem.
velocity up ever
And then I'll
so
let you guys
slightly
try the
to
next
emulate
one
the way a
with your partner.
guitarist's strum
So
often
looking at the
accents
second
the top
equation,
notes.
2x squared minus 3y squared equals
It's a
negative
nice
12.
major chord.
I'm going to go ahead and solve this for y.
Whatever root note we play results in a major chord.
So I have -3y squared.
And while parallel style chords are nice for house music,
-2x
I'd much prefer diatonic
12,
chords that are fitting in
divide
the song's
everything
key.
by -3.
If only there was some kind of player device
and
that
I have
corrects
y
notes
squared
outside of my
is equal
song's
to
key.
We could
of course,
simplify
right.
the negatives.
That's exactly what Scales and Chords does. We can add a Scales and Chords player underneath our Note Echo. Disable the chord switch so that Scales and Chords is simply adjusting the strummed notes coming out of Note Echo to our song's key, B-flat minor.
Thank you. And fix this as 2x
and if we change the root note, you can hear the chords stay inside the key of
and then when I
B-flat
take
minor,
the square root,
while still
I'm gonna have
changing
to plug
to
in
different
two things.
and diatonic
in Y3,
chords.
I'm going to have to plug in this
What I love
function,
about this technique is that you can explore the many cool voicings that happen when Scales and Chords shifts the intervals of a major chord as necessary.
Square root of 2x
Sometimes you get a simple minor chord.
Divided by 3.
Sometimes you get
But
cool
again,
suspended
I can use
chords.
that shortcut on my
And
calculator
sometimes
of
even
that
diminished
alpha
chords.
trace to select.
And the great news is that it's up to
any Y
you
that
to
I'd
explore
like to.
the really
So,
colorful
let's
chord
see,
progressions
source.
you can create this way.
Change that. So I'm going to plug this in. I'm going to do the square root of, I'll make a fraction, alpha y equals 2x squared plus 12 divided by 3. And then for y4, I can just take the opposite.
So like
of
I said
my
from the start, Note Echo isn't tough to
Y3
learn, but it still has
equation.
enormous
So again,
creative
alpha
potential
trace,
for
but
you
now I'm
to
gonna
dive
select
deeper
option
and deeper
3.
into it. I hope I've got you started today, and I
And now I
can't
should
wait to
have that
hear what you all do with it.
graph in for my calculator. So I press graph. Here comes my hyperbola. Notice you've got that coming up there. And my other hyperbola piece.
Today, we're going to look at using VST instruments and effects inside Reason. If you've been making music with Reason for a while,
I might
you
wanna
know how
zoom in a little
monumental
bit
the
here.
change that is. But here's the coolest part. It's really no change at all. Bringing
Where should be our
VSTs into
points
Reason's
at?
rack
Okay, yeah, 0,
instead
2,
invites
and
them
0,
to join in on
-2.
everything we've always
So if you
loved
wanted to
about
zoom in
Reason's
just
quick
slightly
creativity,
so you can see
flexibility,
those point of
endless
intersections.
possibility, allowing you to now
that
get
0,
all the
2,
sounds you want, and even making music with
circle.
VSTs in
Notice
ways
if we
only
zoom in, we see
possible
a
in
better
Reason's
shape of the
modular
circle.
rack. The best way to show you
And
what
now
I
I can
mean
see that
is to make a
hyperbola.
song together using all of Reason's rack device types from Reason devices,
Zoom in.
rack extensions, players,
And
now
what
VST
am I going to
instruments
do
and effects
to
too.
find those
In
point
order
of
to stay
intersections?
focused on the
Press
new
second,
VST techniques in this
trace.
video, we'll move
We
more
gotta put
swiftly
graphing.
through the Reason
Second
tricks and
trace.
devices we've covered in other videos.
Go to intersect.
VSTs come in
Now
all
here
shapes and
is
sizes,
something that
and
might be
designed for
valuable
every
to you
stage
as
of
you're
the
using your
creative
calculator.
process.
The
Founder and
down
CEO
up
of
arrow
Output, Greg
jumps
Lehrman, likes
between
to focus their
functions.
instruments on the initial
And
spark of
whichever
creativity.
function you are
We always
on
start
will
with
show
what
you
is
the
a product
color
that
at
you
the
can
bottom
sit
of the
down
screen.
and start a track
So
with.
right now
Anybody
I'm on the blue
who makes
function.
music
I'm gonna
should be able to
press
find
enter.
inspiration and
And
creativity.
I want to see
that's
where does the
really where
blue
we start.
function and the
So
black
let's do exactly
function
that by starting our
intersect.
idea with some of
So
their
I want to make
instruments.
sure that I'm on the
VST
black
instruments
curve.
or
Notice how
effects
my
you've
calculator
installed
at
on
the
your
bottom is
computer
now
will show up
black.
in Reason's browser
So press
alongside
enter,
built-in rack devices
and then
and
make
rack
a guess,
extensions.
press enter, and it shows
Outputs
me that
sound
point of
libraries
intersection.
run inside the
This
Native
means
Instruments
it's
contact
calculating
player, which
is that
currently
now
appears
this
in our
value
browser
is
using a
so
default
close to
VST
0
logo.
times
This
10
is
to the
how
negative 6, we
VSTs
call
will
it
look
0.
when first installed.
So
Let's
y
drag
is
the
2 and
contact
x is
player into
0.
the rack, and
And
what
the exact
loads is
value we
Reason's
saw
new plug-in rack
algebraically is
device,
0,
which houses
your
our VST
calculator
plugins.
has to get as
Initially, the
close as
plug-in rack
possible
device is very
based off of the
straightforward.
way that
We
the
have a
screen,
patch
and so that's
browser
why
for
it
any
says
plugins
it's
that
about
use
0.
standard FXB and FXP
And then we do it
patches,
again, second
pitch
trace.
and mod wheels, and a
Option
display
5.
screen also currently
And now I'm
showing
going to jump
the
to the
default
pink curve
VST
and the red
label.
curve.
To open the contact player plugin
And press
window,
enter,
we
and
simply
then I can
click
see it's at
anywhere on
0,
the plugin
-2
rack
as well.
device's glass display. Let's
So
load
this is what
Output's
you should
analog
see
strings,
on your
which has some
calculator.
great string and synthesizer hybrid sounds.
This video is going to be a little bit awkward.
Pluck
'cause you
sounds
can't
are a
see my
great way to
calculator on the
start
screen.
song ideas, so
But
we'll use
what
this
I'm looking
one.
at here is I have a circle.
But before we close our plugin window and get on with the music, let's first bring our
Here.
attention to the buttons at the top of the plugin window,
and then I have that
particularly the screenshot
hyperbola.
button. Back when we scrolled to the contact
I'll
player
come
in our
around
browser,
and see
the
what
VST
maybe will
displayed a
happen on the
default
calculator.
logo. If we
But
click the
these are our 2
screenshot
points of
button and close
intersection.
our plugin window,
0, 2,
you can see that we now
and
have a
0,
device
-2.
thumbnail displayed in our browser alongside our other rack devices.
That's so close
It's
to 0
also
times
displayed
10
on the
to the
plugin
negative
rack
6.
device's front panel.
So that's the
Once
same
you
thing.
take a screenshot of your VST, it will
Okay, guys. I know a lot of you are still working, but I just want to stop here because I've seen a few
If we wanted to
mistakes in
automate
algebra
Serum's
work.
built-in filter,
So
we have
before
three
we
options.
continue,
We could, of
I don't
course,
want to
just click
continue
record in our
incorrectly.
sequencer
So
and start
first thing
adjusting
that I
the
saw
filter
many
cutoff
people
on
do is
Serum.
either solve
Our
for
automation
X
is
or
captured
Y, which is
perfectly in
great,
the sequencer.
and substitute it
If
into
you
the other
prefer to
equation.
draw automation points by hand,
Then when we get
you can
to
instead
this
use
point,
the automation button atop the plugin
what
window.
can we
click
do
it once
to
to
get y
activate it,
squared out
and
of
now
the
click the
denominator?
parameter you want to automate. In this case, that's
Good.
filter
Multiply
cutoff.
both sides by
Once
y
clicked,
squared.
a filter cutoff automation lane appears in the sequencer,
Because when I
ready for you
distribute
to
that
draw
in,
in
that'll
automation
eliminate
points.
these fractions. Y squared goes into
In the
itself
third
one
method,
time.
if you like to
So
work
that
with
would be
control
36y
surfaces,
squared
you can assign VST
plus
plugin
4y
parameters
to
to
the
your control
fourth
surface using the
is
remote
equal to
button and a
25y
similar
squared.
process. This time, click the remote
And
button
then those
to
of you who
activate
got
the
here, what did
assignment
you do
process.
next?
Then click the parameter you want to control. Reason's
sorry,
Edit
thank you.
Remote window
36.
pops up,
Thank you.
where you can choose your controller and which knob or fader
Yeah,
it will
we
adjust when the
subtract, set it
plugin's
equal to
filter cutoff.
0. So we would have 4y
Now we can
to
record
the fourth
automation using our controller.
minus 25y squared minus 36 is equal to 0. What would we do from this point? Sorry guys.
To those of you who make music using the front of Reason's rack,
would we do
automate
from
sounds
that
via
point?
the sequencer, play instruments using controllers.
Yeah, you could either use
Congratulations.
substitution or
You've
if you
learned
feel
everything you need to learn
comfortable
about the
just
plug-in rack
factoring
device
the y to
and
the
using
fourth, that's
VSTs in
fine.
Reason.
If you
Now,
wanted
to those
to
of
let
you who like to dive deeper
replace
into
y
Reason's
squared,
advanced world of CV modular
then you
routing
could see
in the
this
back
as
of
a
the rack,
4u
let's take a
squared
tour of how the plug-in rack
minus
device brings
25u
Reason's CV magic
plus
to VST
36
plugins.
equals 0.
I'll search my instruments in the browser for Doom
And then you could
2
use the
by
quadratic
Synapse Audio.
formula to solve
If you
for
know and
or
love
you
the
could
Antidote
factor.
rack extension, also by Synapse
Factoring
Audio,
this one
Doom
when I was
2's
first
sounds
looking at it,
won't
I kept
disappoint.
trying
To
2u
sequence
and
Doom
2u,
2, let's bring in
and
the
you guys would
chord
find that
sequencer
doesn't
by Electric
factor,
Panda
but if you
and
look at
load
it
one of its
as
pattern
4u
presets.
and u,
We connect the chord sequencer to our
the last
Doom
term's
2 VST
positive, so we know
plugin
we're gonna
by
have
flipping
the
the back
same
of
sign
Reason's
as the middle
rack using the
term.
tab key.
And
We
then
can
what would you
drag
guys
cables
use
from chords
to
gate and note
combine
CV
with 4u
outputs
and u?
to the plug-in rack device's gate and CV inputs. Now, if
It
I play
should
some
be-
chords,
Yep, 4 and 9. If we make this a 4,
the chord
negative
sequencer generates a
16u
pattern
plus
from those
negative
incoming
9u
notes to send to
would
our
give you that
VST
negative
instrument.
25u.
I can even drag a scales and chords player
And now
above
we
the
set
chord
each of these
sequencer
equal
to
to
convert
0,
single notes on my
4u
keyboard
minus
into
9
colorful
equals
chord
0.
patterns.
And u minus 4 equals 0. We could solve for u,
One
so
cool
we
thing
get
about chord
4u equals
sequencer
9.
and routing in Reason's rack in general
So
is
u
that
is equal
one
to
device
9
can control
fourths.
many things. Chord
And u is equal
sequencer
to
has several
4.
gate and CV outputs
But I
and
do have
several
to
pattern
pop y
lanes.
squared
That
back in
means
here
that if
so
I were
that I
to
can
drag
go on to
another
solve for
VST
y.
instrument like Synthmaster
So y
1
squared equals 9
and load a patch,
fourths. Y
I could
squared
also
is equal
connect it to
to
the
4.
chord sequencer using the same technique.
Take the square root.
This time, it's the second set
And
of
what
gate and
are
note
my
CV
answers for
cables
y?
that'll go
For
to
the
Synthmaster 1's gate and
plus
CV
or minus,
input.
good. Plus or minus
I can now
2.
program the second
and
pattern
square
lane,
root,
which will
I
use the
get
same
plus or
incoming chords
minus
to generate a bass
3
line.
over 2.
With our
Which
other
means I'm gonna
VST
have to plug in
instruments, and the
4
drums are
values for
programmed in
y, or
Calm,
at least
we've
take
got
into
something of a
consideration
tropical house vibe
4
going on
values
here.
for y, and I determine what are my corresponding x values. So if I plug in a positive 2
We'll
in for
round
y,
out
and
this
I would
song
do it to
idea
this
with a
equation,
top-line synth melody.
because it seems
I know
nice
we've
and
been
easy to
focusing
use.
purposely on
When y
VST
is
instruments
2,
so far in this tutorial,
then I would
but
have
there are
x
some
times 2
fantastic-sounding
equals
rack
6.
extension instruments and effects for
So x
Reason,
equals
and
3.
Blamsoft's
So I have
Expanse
1
is
point
one great
as
example.
3, 2.
Let's record a line.
When y is negative 2, then I have x times negative 2 equals 6. So I have x is equal to negative 3. So that's negative 3, negative 2. Now one thing to be careful with, don't just say plus or minus 3, plus or minus 2. Because if we say it in that way, then you could look at it
To
as
process
positive
this sound
3
a
being
bit
paired with
further,
negative 2.
let's bring a VST audio
which
effect into our
obviously
signal
is
chain
not
by
a
dragging a
solution
Fab Filter
It's
Pro
it's an
Q2
ordered
beneath
pair on a
Expanse and
graph.
clicking its
3,
thumbnail
2,
to open it.
and negative 3,
Fab
negative 2.
Filter is an EQ plugin typically
And then
used
also
in mixing
we need
and
to
mastering,
plug in that 3
thanks to
halves
its
and
built-in
negative
Spectrum
3 halves.
visualizer and up to
So
24
when
bands
y
of
is
EQ
equal
that
to
go from subtle
3
to
halves,
surgical. We can
then
easily
we
set
have
up a
x
custom
times 3
bandpass
halves
style
is equal to
filter using the
6.
Pro Q2. But one thing we
could
can't easily
multiply
do
by the
inside the
reciprocal.
plugin itself is to sweep
So we
these
get
5
x is
EQ
equal to
bands as
6
a group,
times 3
and
halves,
certainly not in a
which
musical or
would be
rhythmic
18
way.
halves, which would be
This
9.
is a perfect job for the plug-in rack device's CV programming.
No, sorry, 2/3.
You may recognize
My
this
bad.
style of
My
modulation
goodness, I
routing
should
from
not do
Reason's
math
Thor
today.
synthesizer
So
or many other
6 times
plugins which use
2/3,
a similar
12
method to
divided
set
by
up
3 gives me
modulation control.
4.
Our
Have to
first
multiply by
step
the
is to teach the plugin rack device which parameter inside the VST we want to control. We do that with the Learn button. I'll click Learn on the CV parameters first row, and our fab filter pops up, where I can select the first EQ band and click its frequency knob.
Then we have X
You can see that our CV programmer has assigned our first parameter correctly to band 1's frequency.
Multiply by the reciprocal.
Since we have 5 bands,
and we
just need to do that a few more times for EQ band 2, 3, and so on.
Which gives me -4.
You'll notice each row in the CV programmer now displays the correct EQ band and also its base value. This base value represents where the VST plugin's parameter is currently set.
If you could solve this for
if I lower the base value of band 1 frequency on our CV programmer, you'll see the plugin follow along, and it works both ways too. If I adjust the EQ band in the
reflected this way. If you need help,
simply moving the shape knob while recording lets us go back and edit, duplicate, and generally tweak out on the exact evolution of our waveform.
Let's go ahead and let's take a look at this last
But another
one.
powerful way to adjust our shape knob with tools inside of Europa is using one of the envelopes. The envelope section at the bottom of Europa is a blank canvas of modulation possibility.
3, good.
Let's set our shape assignment to envelope 1, max out the amount, set our initial shape to the start of the range, and make sure we select envelope 1 for editing. If we selected a very basic envelope preset to start off, you can see that over the course of our envelope's duration, our waveform shape moves through the entire range of the wavetable.
Add straight down. What is 4 over x squared plus 3 over x squared? Yes,
we can modify any
preset
preset we like by moving points, double-clicking to add our own points, adjusting the curve between 2 points, and for envelopes which have parallel points, we can click the Edit Y position button to adjust their heights together.
Yes, how do we do that? How do you guys do that?
Also, in this Edit Y position mode, we can hold down the Command key on a Mac or Control on Windows and draw our own custom envelope shapes.
So if 7 is equal to 7, then x squared has to equal 2. The other way I've seen people look at it is do the cross product property. Some people feel more comfortable with that. So it would be 7 times 2 is equal to 7x squared.
There are several included patches with Europa that make use of changing the wavetable shape using any of these methods. The sounds you can get range from epic pads.
Take the square root. So yes, x is equal to a plus or minus
to aggressive biting basses.
We need to find the corresponding y value.
And many characters in between.
So when x is equal to a positive root 2, what would come out to be the y coordinate? So we have 4 over root 2
But moving through wavetable shapes is only one way that Europa's engines create evolving impressive sounds. The key to understanding the power of Europa is to realize that its waveforms and wavetables exist as algorithms, not as audio.
What's 4 divided by 2?
By working algorithmically with oscillators, we can perform a number of modifications to sculpt the waveform in ways that simply aren't possible with traditional analog oscillators. Let's check out another song, and I'll show you what I mean.
And you would have 6 over y to the 4th is equal to 3 halves. If you think of this as 4 halves.
This is made from a couple Europa pads being processed with synchronous.
Then what would you guys want to do from here?
Radical piano sampled into grain.
Cross product property, 6 times 2 equals, yeah, okay. So we have 12, 6 times 2.
And a loop, courtesy of Reason 10's drum loop supply.
3y to the 4th. Divide by 3.
But let's focus our attention on this Europa lead.
And we have 4 is equal to y to the 4th. Take the 4 through. Do I have to take into consideration
the first thing that might catch your attention is the near hypnotic dance of our wave.
I do.
What's making that happen?
Because if I think about a negative number, like negative 2 to the 4th.
To answer
-2 times -2
let's
times
first
-2
turn
times
off the extra flare in this
positive 16. So
with
I
all
do
that
have to
cool
take into
Europa
account
shape
that this
shifting
y
turned off,
value
we've got a pretty
positive
standard
or
triangle
could be
wave
negative,
with some effects on
because
it.
when I
The
force
wavetable used
it
in
could
this
become
patch
the
is saw
positive
triangle, which simply goes
So I
from
do
a
need a
sawtooth
plus or
wave
minus.
to a triangle wave
Now here's
to a
another
reverse
question.
sawtooth. Moving the
Can
shape
this
knob
be
back and forth
simplified?
makes for a
I mean,
cool
can this
sound.
be, yeah, can we write it in a simpler way? Yes, let's think about it in this way. If I think about plus or minus 4
and
to
while
the
we
1/4,
could use an envelope like we did before, for simple back and forth motion like this, we can also use
what
an
could
LFO.
I rewrite
So this
number
time,
4
let's
as?
set our assignment knob to LFO1, which is set up as a slow-moving sine wave. Dial in the amount just a little, and our triangle wave sways in the breeze.
2 squared.
Turn it up higher, and our wave now morphs back and forth through all three shapes.
Look at 2 squared, look at 1/4 as raised to the 2 to the negative 2 even.
Modulation of the shape isn't the only type of shape-shifting we can achieve. Each Europa engine has 2 modifiers which can alter the waveform in a variety of ways.
And
remember, because our waveform exists algorithmically, these modifications aren't processing the audio. They're recalculating the very waveform we're creating in our engine. Let's start with modifier 2 and temporarily turn down our shape modulation to see a steady wave. Modifier 2 is set to fold, which increases the amplitude of our wave. But when it gets to the ceiling, it folds the wave in upon itself. As I go up, each fold makes a more complex and distorted sounding wave.
So rather than writing it as 4 to the 1/4, we would want to rewrite it as plus or minus square root of 2. Square root it twice.
Let's now turn off modifier 2 and activate modifier 1. Phase distort bends our waveform in either direction and introduces some phase-shifting bite in the process.
Is actually root 2 plus or minus root 2. So root 2, and root 2, negative 2.
Just like we did for the shape, we can use an LFO to modulate our modifier's amount over time. Let's use LFO 2 and dial it into taste.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's a different way that I could look at it. I could even look at it as 4 raised to the...
Remember, we've temporarily disabled LFO 1 from modulating the shape. So if we dial that back in, check out how our wave now bends and morphs from both LFOs working together. And of course, let's not forget the wave folding we did with modifier 2.
Which would be the 4th root of 4, but how would you look at that as a simpler way? I'm just trying to show you how it simplifies to plus or minus root 2. That's the best way
Our simple triangle wave has come a long way, right?
Base, then you add the exponents, and that's why you can see the negative first.
We've got 2 more sections to our engine, but to explore those, let's check out another song.
But think about this. If we plug in x as negative root 2, it's going to square, so we're going to get the exact same answers. But you are right, Nate, that we do have to think
I'm particularly
about what
interested in this
then.
sound.
We're going to get a y as a plus or minus root 2. So we do have,
this patch is so easy to make. Let's delete Europa and make it from scratch together. I'll double-click Europa in the browser and right-click to reset the device.
So we have 4
now
solutions.
We've got a simple sine wave.
This is one where you could write plus or minus root 2,
no filter, no cool envelopes, no nothing. For the wave table, I'll select a special style of wave table in Europa.
All right, guys, we're going to stop there.